So the book that I chose to do was Agatha Christie's The Body in the Library. This book is identified as a cozy mystery because there are no gruesome details, and Miss Marple, the detective, uses emotional reasoning to solve the crime. The novel takes place in the library of Gossington Hall in a small village called St. Mary Mead, England. The story opens up in a man's library where a young girl is found murdered. Throughout the novel, the detective Miss Marple works alongside the police to find out who murdered this girl and why they put her in a man's library. So this is a list of the main characters in the novel. You have Arthur and Dolly Bantry, who live in Gossington Hall, and this is where the body was found. Basil Blake is the suspected murderer. Mark and Josie are the actual murderers, and Josie is Mark's secret wife. You have Detective Superintendent Harper, Conway Jefferson, who is the old man that was about to adopt Ruby, the girl who was murdered. You have Ruby Keene, the body found in the library, and Pamela Reeves, the actual body found in the library. So it opens up with the Bantrys waking up, and Dolly assumes that she's having a dream, but it ends up being real life. They find the body of a young girl in the library. So the police come and investigate who the girl is that was murdered, and they end up finding out that her name is Ruby Keene. She has no relation to the Bantrys, so the beginning of the novel is basically the police trying to discover why the body was put there. Mr. Jefferson, who is the old man at the hotel that Ruby Keene worked at, was heartbroken at the news because his children and wife died just years prior to meeting Ruby, and he took a liking to her and he was about to adopt her. So the police ended up suspecting that the murderer was a boyfriend of Ruby's. However, Miss Marple does not agree with this. Another girl ends up going missing, Pamela Reeves, and they later find her body in a car that was burned and abandoned. So it seemed like someone was trying to cover up the murder because Pamela may have heard clues about the actual murder of Ruby Keene. Miss Marple comes to the discovery that Basil Blake found her dead and dumped the body in the Bantry's library. Basil Blake is a film producer, and the actual murderers planted evidence in his house. When Mr. Conway is ready to change his will and leave his money to young girl dancers at the end of the story, an intruder tries to murder him. The police end up stopping the suspect. So it concludes with the findings that Ruby was not the actual girl in the library, but Pamela Reeves was dressed in Ruby's clothes. Ruby was the body found in the burned-out car. Conway's son-in-law, Mark, was the one who killed Pamela, along with his secret wife, because he wanted the money inherited. They framed Basil Blake after they drugged Ruby. And in the end, Josie and Mark confessed to the murders of Pamela Reeves and Ruby Keene. In Agatha Christie's author's foreword, she describes The Body in the Library as a cliché of detective fiction. She states that when writing her own variation on this theme, she decided that the library should be a completely conventional one, while the body would be a highly improbable and sensational one. And this story is told in the third-person omniscient point of view. One thing that I found very interesting was that in the novel she mentions herself through the use of a character. A young boy claims that he reads many mystery novels, and he has autographs from authors including Agatha Christie. So the quote is on page 64. "Do you like detective stories? I do. I read them all, and I've got autographs from Dorothy Sayers and Agatha Christie and Dixon Carr and H.C. Bailey." And then another thing that I really liked was the use of imagery through this quote on page 183. "And it will dawn on him little by little, and suddenly he'll be horrified and cut to the soul, and he'll fasten up like a clam and just endure day after day." The first review is from the Crime Review, And this critic says, "That's actually my biggest disappointment about The Body in the Library. I would have loved to follow Miss Marple's investigation. Instead, she figures it out long before everyone else, but the reader is stuck following the foundering police officers." So I agreed with this critic because I think that I would have liked it better if it centered around Miss Marple, the detective, solving the mystery, but it actually revolved around the police trying to solve it. And the second quote, "It nevertheless provides an opportunity for the author to play with the form of a detective story and to produce an entertaining text that continues to attract readers and to serve as a basis for academic discussion to this day." So I was immediately captivated by the first chapter because it starts out with Miss Bantry having a dream that there's a body in the library, but it turns out to be true. However, that feeling of captivation did not last long. The first half of the book did not involve Miss Marple, the detective, solving the case. It was not until towards the middle of the book that she started to help solve the mystery. It was almost boring, but was surrounded by a few surprising moments near the end of the book. For those who love suspense and crime thrillers, I would not recommend this book. I found it hard to sit down and finish it because of the lack of suspense. I find myself drawn to mystery novels where the criminal tells an interesting story of his or her motive. This story seemed to lack most of the concepts that I look for in a mystery novel. The conclusion of the murder investigation was the best part about the novel because it is hard to see it coming.